Hello and welcome to the podcast Life Without Limits. This is the podcast where we talk to interesting people who have been through tough times and come out the other side to achieve great things. So today I've got a great guest for you. Her name is Zoe Sewart and she's going to tell us a bit about her story. So she had a stroke at the age of 22 years old and she's now competing as an adaptive CrossFit athlete in the adaptive CrossFit games. So let's introduce her to you guys. Hi Zoe, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. Are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. So tell us a little bit about you and your story.
Okay. So I guess I'll start when I was 21 because I was just finishing university. I was doing my psychology degree, and it was at the time where I needed to hand in my dissertation. Stress was high, but life was good. And I was doing the pre-drinks British thing that you do. You drink before you go out. And I was with my friends. And I guess my life kind of turned from being this graduate at university nearly to then, unfortunately, having a stroke. And yeah, since then, I've kind of become more and more disabled. So I guess where I'm at now, I'm a psychological therapist. I work in NHS CAMS, which is Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service. I've worked extremely hard to get back into work since my injury. And only now can I say that I'm in a place where I feel like I'm recovering, even though it's been nearly 9 years since the incident. So it's so surreal to be sat here right now talking to you, who I've been following for, I know I'm fangirling right now, but I've had you on social media for a couple of months. And to be honest, Ant, when you see people who have had a stroke, you only really see Paralympic athletes, old people, or the stereotypical sort of benefits grounders. That's the paradigm that you see for disability. And I just could never see myself reflected back in life, even in general. So when I found you, I was like, oh my God, there's someone my age, normal, who is just being athletic, which is what I've always had a big part of my identity. So it's so cool that I actually managed to finally meet you in person. And now I'm talking to you. So I feel like I'm having a wow moment right now. So I'm sorry, keep pulling me back if I talk too much.
That's right. So how, back when you was 21, what kind of symptoms was you getting before you had a stroke?
So it was that night when I was pre-drinking with friends and I got tingling and numbness all down my left side. And I said to my friend, we're all having a laugh. And I said, I think I'm having a stroke. And they're like, ha, ha, ha. No, you're not. And I said, no, I really think I'm having a stroke. So I don't know if you remember, there used to be that advert that was like face, do you know, the fast?
Oh yeah, advert. The fast, yeah.
Yeah. So my face started to droop and I couldn't put my arm above my head. And what was really strange was after a few minutes, it came back to normal and there was nothing wrong with me. But it freaked me out. So I rang 111. I said, this has happened, but now I'm okay. But I just don't feel myself. It doesn't feel right. There was just something telling me that something wasn't quite right. So my friend took me to A&E. And I was really upset and I was scared about falling asleep in case it happened again. So they scanned me out of precaution. They put me through an MRI scanner and we said, better to be safe than sorry. And I'd had the scan. I was 21. And then I thought, no news is good news. I hadn't heard for about 6 weeks my results back. It'd been Christmas. It was in the new year. And I thought, I best chase it up and find out just for sure. And I rang like the first week back in January, which is like the following year. And strangely, they brought me in the next day. So they said, no, you need to come in tomorrow. And it was a Saturday. And I was like, oh no. So I went up to the hospital with my mum and they looked at my scan and they said, you have an arteriovenous malformation on your brain, which is like a form of aneurysm. It's 3 centimeters in size. It's in your right hemisphere, and what you've had is a TIA. So it's like an early warning stroke, because this AVM was putting pressure on my oxygen supply in my brain, and it was my body's way of saying that something's not right. So at first they thought it was a hemiplegic migraine, but when they looked at the scan, I think they'd found it by accident, to be honest. And it was only because I had these symptoms that they thought maybe I should just check it out, and I'm glad that they did. So at this point, I hadn't been diagnosed with having a stroke condition. It was later in the year I got sent to Sheffield Hospital for radiation treatment. So I had radiation, like radiology, and it was during the procedure that it bled, unfortunately. So I had radiation treatment that was supposed to shrink the AVM. Unfortunately, it didn't just shrink it, it put it under pressure that it actually bled. So it was the following year, really, that when I came out of surgery, I felt weaker on that side, but they said it was swelling and that I would improve. And what happened over the course of a year was I was getting weaker and weaker and weaker on my left side. So every day I'd wake up and suddenly I can't open a bobble between my fingers, or I can't wiggle my toes. There was just something different every day. And I'd go back to the doctors and I'd say, something's not right. And they put me on 2 courses of steroids to bring the swelling down in my brain. They said, it's just a reaction from the surgery. It's just necrosis. It's just swelling. Once it comes down, you'll feel better. And it was only over a period of a couple of months, the swelling came down, and they said, actually, now the swelling's gone, we can see that there's been a bleed, and that's caused permanent left-sided weakness. So I can't open my hand. My left side's very weak, and I have spasticity in my leg and my foot as well. So I guess it's a long-winded answer for something that people expect, that you just kind of get a headache one day and then you wake up and oh, I've had a stroke. It just wasn't that straightforward for me. There was a lot of ifs, buts, and maybes, and a lot of hopes. Because of my age, I think they hoped for the best, and there was a lot of stereotypes, even with the health professionals, of she's too young, she'll recover. Let's not think of the worst case scenario, she'll be okay. But I don't know how to describe it. I just knew that I wasn't okay, so I just kept going back and back and back. Please check, and then they confirmed that yeah, it was permanent, and this is how it was going to be, and then I was finally formally diagnosed with having a stroke.
It's a good job you're very persistent, because normally a 21, 22-year-old would be like, oh, it's nothing, I'll just carry on with life. So it's because of your persistence that you actually got the answer, and you are where you are today. So that's really helped.
Yeah, I think it was the knowing my body and trusting my body, and also I fell into this no man's land of, I had an acquired brain injury, but there was no support for that. There was no rehabilitation. There was no groups I could access. There was no sort of pathway for what I was presenting with. So I kind of needed them to formalize what has happened to me, so I could finally start accessing some physio and get into like hydrotherapy and try and find people like me, because I've gone from finishing my degree, planning on moving to Australia, to then be diagnosed with this AVM with a no flight, no stress, no drinking, no driving, within like the space of 24 hours. So my whole life had flipped upside down, and I couldn't even access anywhere to get help. So that's why I think I was probably more persistent with the help from family as well, to get it formalized of what has happened here.
Yeah, and that's kind of a common thing with people who've had strokes. They have their stroke, they get the care in the hospital, and then they're just kind of discharged and left to get on with it. And they just kind of stuck. And that's where you see the decline in most people.
There's one word I've come to really dislike, and that's plateau. Because it was the one word that physiotherapists kept saying to me when I'd go in, week out, doing the same arm up exercises, and they'd get the tape measure out, and I couldn't get past like 30 centimetres, and they'd say, you've plateaued. You're not going to get any better from here. You're having the same scores every week. And like constant discharge planning after only a year of support. I really struggled with that, because you believe it. Like in that moment, you believe the statistics, you believe the trajectory. Even though you're a young adult, they kind of felt like that's the best that they could do, which was final. There was no challenging that. So yeah, I was kind of kicked out into the world with no license anymore, no way to drive, no one who looked like me, no one who had been through what I had been through. I had to learn how to get myself dressed. Billy, my husband now, was like washing my hair for me, putting my clothes on for me, doing everything for me when I should be out living my life after finished my degree and going working and using it. So there was very, very little support at all to figure out how to get better. But yeah, everyone around me, there was just this. When I look back now, there was such an immense pressure to get better. I don't know where that came from, but everyone just kept saying, "Are you better yet? Are you better now?" Like maybe old colleagues and stuff that I used to work with before, but when will you get your hand back? And when will you, are you walking yet? I don't know why, but everyone just kind of kept saying, "Oh, how's recovery going? How's things getting better?" And I felt like such a pressure to think like, well, I don't think I will. I don't know what that means. I don't know what we're measuring it against.
Yeah, it's a tough one. You find that the medical services, they're always they look at, oh, you can't do this anymore, you can't do that anymore. And so they kind of put you in this box. But really, it's up to you what you can and can't do and can achieve. You know your body, so you know if you can do this or that. You know that. They should be encouraging that a bit more.
Yeah, they definitely should. I don't think people realise the power of words in rehabilitation settings, because you look at professionals, especially when you're feeling so vulnerable, and you think they must have seen hundreds of patients, and if they're telling me that I'm not going to be able to do this anymore, I'm not going to be able to walk again, I'm not going to be able to drive, I'm not going to be able to work, it drip feeds in there, and you believe it.
Yeah. Well, a bit like for me, they told me I'd probably never walk or be very active, and now I'm running and lifting weights and doing more than most people. And it's only when you came to watch me at my competition and you came up to me, it's like, how do you do that? This is what I want to do. Kind of us doing what we do, we kind of open up the eyes for everyone to show you what you really can do.
I never, until I found you, it wasn't even on my radar as a possibility. It genuinely wasn't. Because you just don't. One, I've never met anyone my age that's had a stroke ever, and I live near Manchester. And to turn up at a competition where I thought I was watching my stepbrother in a wheelchair compete, and you're there, and I'm like, he looks like me, he walks like me, his arm is held like me. What the hell is he chucking over his head? What is it? He's running. He's doing press ups. I can't tell you how much the ceiling of where I thought I could get to was just absolutely exploded.
That's true.
It was.
And that's we need to just open each other's worlds, to share what we do and tell each other what we can do. Because I remember we were having a conversation. She was like, "Oh, you were like, oh, I've only come to watch to see what everyone does." And I was like, "No, next time you get into the competition." And he's like, "Maybe." And the wicked thing is, last weekend you actually did your first adaptive CrossFit competition, didn't you?
I did. It was thrown on
How
me.
was it?
It was amazing. Amanda, who's my PT, who's awesome. She found me and she was like, I'm gonna make you a sick athlete. And I was like, what? No one's ever looked at me and thought that. And they had a team of 4 already signed up, and they needed someone to pair up with someone from the gym that wanted to do it. And Amanda was like, Zoe, you're competing on Saturday. This was 4 days notice. I've only been training for 7 weeks officially. I've still not worked out half of the moves and how to do it with one arm. And my throat's drying up now. I was that nervous. I was like, no, there's no way I can do it. But I had a look on this Battle Cancer website, and there was a challenge. There's a challenge version, isn't there? There's the compete, and then there's the challenge. So I thought, if there's any competition that I can just go in and give it a go, maybe this is the one to get my confidence up. And if I don't finish it, does it matter because I've raised money for charity? That's really what it's about. I felt like there was less attention on me. I got there. I thought I only had to do 1 out of the 5 workouts. I thought you could pick which round you do. So when I signed in, I was like, oh, we're going to do the Achilles round. And she's like, yeah, and the rest. I was like, what? I have to do box jumps and rows and bike and lunges. So I had to quickly get my head around that.
And what did you find was the hardest exercises for you? How did you adapt them and get around them?
The box jumps I was quite apprehensive about because it's obviously we've got 2 limbs that are affected. We've got one upper, one lower, so there's a lot of body movement involved in that. So I let the judges know that what I couldn't do, and they just said, well, what can you do? And it was just instinctual that one judge stood on one side, judge stood on the other. I held the hand, they hiked me up onto the box, and I just walked over it. And I just did that again and again and again and again. I cannot praise the judges that day enough. They didn't make me feel like I was an anomaly, disabled person. There was a guy called Adam that met us at the beginning, and he said, I'm an adaptive PT. I've worked with lots of people with different abilities, including cerebral palsy, which I guess is the easiest reference for people to understand our body. And he said, right, for this round, you're not going to do the over and unders. You're going to squat, and your partner will do burpees. Just let the judges know that that's what we've decided. So every time I went to each round, I felt empowered to say, I've got a disability, but I'm going to do it this way around. And not one of them batted an eyelid. They were like, great. And you know what? I was in the round where you had to do press ups. Now, I've messaged you going, how are you doing this? Because it's so hard. I've messaged Abby as well, because you guys blow me away with how you manage it. I had to do it. I was in the middle of a competition. I had no time to overthink it. So I'm there like up, down, up, down, up, down with like one arm, doing whatever my body would let me do. And I was fatiguing. And one of the judges came over, and she was like, you do one, I do one. You do one, I do one. And on the other side, there was another judge just going, you are incredible. I can't believe you're doing this. Remember why you're here. I can't tell you how much I needed that. Even out of this competition arena, to have that inner voice saying that to me, rather than, you look stupid, you're not doing it right, you're going to hurt yourself, you're going to have a bleed, it just overrode all that negative criticism. Like, they were amazing.
Because so often in our lives, we're always told the negative, or be careful, don't do this, don't do this, don't do that. And to me, that's why I love adaptive CrossFit, because you were told, don't be silly, you can do this, you can do it this way, and you're so encouraged, and you feel so empowered that actually you can do these things. And when people are kind of cheering you on and shouting, screaming for you, just gives you this fire in your belly that makes you feel amazing.
Amazing. Yeah. Being down at Southern Quarter, I've never been in energy like it. Other people, genuinely happy for other people. If they've done 1 rep or 20 reps, if they've done 5 kilos or 25 kilos, everyone was just cheering and was just so hyped up for the other person. You know, people just jumping in and helping out with equipment, or like standing on the back of wheelchairs. They don't know them, they've never met them, never had a conversation, but just jumping in and being that support. That was my biggest worry being back in the gym. It's taken me a long time to get back into an able-bodied gym because I'm so self-conscious about putting the weights on one-handed, or like setting my bands up and stuff, or coming in with my splints on. Like, it was just I'm cringing now at the thought of it because it was just so difficult. When I was at Southern Quarter, I think I spent most of my time with my mouth open. I was watching Annika, I was watching Brooke, I was watching you. Even when you weren't competing, just watching how you manoeuvred around life. You know, opening a bag of crisp or drinking from a bottle, you know, opening it, like putting it in your arm, opening it with one arm and drinking it. Just the everyday stuff. Fastening your shoelaces. I watched you do that. You know, putting your splints on. It just wasn't even a big deal. So that I probably got more from the out of the arena just as much as I did watching you.
Just being around others that are in the same kind of environment.
Yeah,
because
stuff.
literally on your own, you don't know anyone. I don't know anyone that's like me in my area. And doing this competition is now giving you that boost of confidence.
Yeah.
It puts you on such a high that you could probably go into a gym now and be like, I know what I need to do now.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting there. It's still early days, but I am actually going in with my hand splint on, and attracting a crowd, which is bizarre, but being okay with it. Do you know,
Yeah.
you've spent your whole life avoiding people looking at you, and then suddenly you actually are okay with it because they're like, wow, you know,
Yeah.
look what you can do. It's totally different.
Because the way to think about it is, people aren't staring because of you're being different. They're staring because they're actually in awe of what you do. They're like, wow, how are they doing that? But we're so self-conscious, we're thinking, oh God, everyone's staring. I look silly, I look stupid. So just kind of change that thinking and go out there and just be the best you can be.
I really wish I'd experienced this sooner. I really do. I do believe that everything comes at the right time, and I do think this is the right time for me to tackle this. I just wish I'd have had those experiences and I guess that feedback a lot sooner into my injury, because when I was newly disabled, I was still going to festivals and concerts, or using my badge to get around, or going Christmas shopping, and I'd always get a bang on my car. You can't park there. It's for disabled people. I went to Leeds Festival, and it was like, here we go, another trier trying to get in the disabled parking. And it was already so hard for me to say it out loud that I was like, I had a disability. So to then have to keep proving it over and over and over again, it was hard, like really hard. So now walking into a gym and my arm being tight that day, I almost feel like proud of it. Like, yeah, my arm doesn't work the same, but look what I can do. I wish I'd have found this sooner.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm sure you can do many more competitions to come as well. This is just the start.
Yeah. It's
That brings me on to my next question. So, what have been some of the biggest obstacles you think you've faced, and how have you really overcome them?
Probably that, what I was talking about. Seeing my body change was probably one of the biggest obstacles. I guess I've gone 21 years of my life being able to use 4 limbs, and then suddenly I don't look like that anymore. And there's, it's a real clear difference as well of how I walk and how I hold myself. That whenever I was out with my friends, I would hide my arm behind them, or I'd delete. I never wanted to see a picture of myself. I never wanted to look at it back. If my husband took pictures of me like camping, I'd get him to delete them. They'd never go up anywhere because I just really struggled with that visual feedback of what I look like now. So that was probably one of my biggest obstacles. And just figuring out how to do life with one arm. Driving. No one knocks at your door and says, look at all these adaptations you can use, look at all this cool equipment you can buy. No one tells you what's left. No one tells you. How do I open a jar? How do I butter my bread? How do I zip up a coat? Like, no one. And I know you've got a channel now, but I've searched YouTube for long hours trying to find.
There's nothing on there. So that's why I started doing videos of the one hand stuff.
Yeah, where were you 10 years ago?
So many people have been like, where has this been? I was like, I do this every day, but it's amazing. I was like, really? But to someone who can only use one hand and only newly use one hand, it's kind of gold dust.
Yeah. It just can't be that rare, can it? I know there's not many young stroke people, but it can't be that rare. I struggled with people saying to me, but you're too young and too pretty to have a stroke. And I just thought, what does that even mean? Like, does that mean that I've brought it on myself? Like, people would assume that it's something that I've, like my lifestyle that I've done wrong.
Self-inflicted,
like maybe I've drank too much, or, maybe I've been smoking, or I don't know. There was just this insinuation that maybe I'd done something wrong to myself. Now I've learned to just say, well, it doesn't discriminate. It's not whether you're a good person, bad person.
It can happen any age,
any time, any place, So I do find myself educating people a lot around that. That's kind of how I've overcome it. One obstacle as well that I came across was trying to get back into sport, which is why I'm so pleased to have found this, something that I could do. Before I had my injury, I played netball for university and I got scouted for the county. It was something that I enjoyed doing. I love being competitive. I love team sports. That was just like a big part of my identity. So after my injury, I've been trying to get into some form of sport. I tried cycling. I tried football. I tried netball. But none of them were my age group or that competitive. So I could do walking football if I wanted to, which was for the elderly community, or I could do cycling, but it's very expensive to go on the velodrome, and I had to do that on a tandem. So you had to find someone with a tandem bike to go around with me. And then I went to back to netball in my community, and you won't be happy about this. The coach would get me to sort out the bibs whilst they had everyone else doing the warm up. So I would turn up and I'd pay my fee, and he'd say, "Oh, Zoe, we're doing footwork today, so you were all right, kind of sorting the bibs out whilst we do our warm up." I was like, really? I would be in centre court, running up and down, smashing this, and now I'm sorting bibs out. I found it so limiting.
It's demoralizing.
Oh, it was psychologically torture, going somewhere that I've been so brave anyway to try and get back into it, to then be pushed down of well, we don't know how to get you involved, so you do the bibs. And then I'd be against girls who would purposely put themselves against me as goalkeeper and say, I'll go against Zoe because she's easy. I need to warm up my shooting skills, so I'll go against Zoe, or they'd bat the ball down to the bottom of the court because I know that I can't go and get it. Just little competitive discrimination things in there that was just a different level to what I'd experienced so far. So I think there was that undertone when I was going back into the gym that I thought, I'm going to be preyed on here as someone who's vulnerable and I'm going to be taken advantage of. So there was that experience that I had underlying before I even got in the gym.
So straight away you can see the difference from sports and then adaptive CrossFit. Like adaptive CrossFit is so encouraging and it makes you feel good as well. So another bonus point for adaptive CrossFit there as well.
Yeah, and you're not relying on anyone. Like what I thought was great about Southern Quarter was everyone that was there was competing against themselves. They weren't ever looking to their right or their left to see how many reps they'd done or how heavy they were or what they were doing that they weren't doing. Everyone was in their own zone.
It's about beating themselves.
Yeah.
See, CrossFit is about get to that finish line no matter what, you got to get to that finish line. You're too busy trying to get to that finish line to even think about anyone else. That's you're in the battle against yourself, really. And what I love about it is like they say, oh, you got to do burpees, but you can say to them, but I've only got one arm. I don't care. Get down and give me burpees. And I love it.
Yeah. It's and then your brain goes, oh, can I do burpees? So it's more likely to just give it a go and see what happens.
Yeah, you'll find a way.
You'll find a way. Yeah.
So my next question would be, what is your biggest, proudest achievement? And that can be sport related or whatever related, recovery related. Have three goals. What are your biggest, proudest achievements?
Getting married. And I know it's a bit cheesy, but it was the thing that got me through when I was turning up for physio week in, week out. Just thought, I want to be able to walk down the aisle. Like Billy's been through it all with me since I was, we've been together since school. So he's known me as able-bodied. Then I had my stroke. He's known me go through hell. And now we're on the other side. A wedding day for us, it wasn't about us getting married. It was just absolute celebration that we'd got to this point where I could walk down the aisle, that I could dance with him, that I could put my arms around his neck, not to strangle him, to dance with him. It was tempting at times, So we actually went for a walk on the cliffs just because I could. So we went with our photographer. And we left the party for a bit because I want memories all around our house of me being proud of my body and what it could and couldn't do. So that's what my house is filled with now. Not hospital letters or adaptation equipment or boards from the side in the kitchen. It's just like CrossFit, is gym equipment and wedding pictures and
positive things.
Yeah, it's taken me a while.
So your affected side is your left side, isn't it?
Yeah.
So your wedding ring, do you wear it on your left hand?
Great question. Yeah, I do, but I wasn't gonna. So I didn't do it in front of everybody because I was very conscious about it looking like Billy was prying open a corpse hand, and it's painful, to open up that hand. So what I actually did, and no one actually at the ceremony knew this, but I had it on before I went down the aisle. So Billy put it on before, the day before, just me and him, and then on the day, it was just no one really knew any different. I was told that there's places in Europe that have it on their right side. They do have their wedding rings on the right, so it won't be too much of a problem. But it sits there comfortably, and I'm less likely to lose it because it's always closed. So,
because I think that'd be a worry for me, whether it would slip off or would it hurt the hand.
does when I'm training. I have to take it off when I'm training because it gets so tight.
Tight.
Yeah. I have had blisters from it. I get blisters from my nails anyway because it's so tight. But it's fine. It's fine otherwise. It just sits there. But when I'm doing any bar work or lifting, I take it off.
Okay, cool. Right. So our next question is, what would you say to somebody who feels they are unable to reach their full ability because of their disability?
I would say, how do you know? Like, how does anyone know where the bar is? And I wish that someone would have said that to me the first day of physio when they started saying this is as good as it's going to get. I wish I had, the strength and the belief to say, how do you know? How do you know how far I'm going to get?
Yeah.
I guess I work in mental health and I work with children and young people now. So the first thing I go to is social media, and I'll say you need to cull it. You need to cull your visual representation of anything negative, and you need to fill that feed with what you want to see in life. So
What you
I've got
want to be.
what you want to do, what you want to be, what you want to achieve. I've been listening to the Disabled and Proud podcast, and I've been listening to yours. I've been listening to the Disabled and Proud podcast that Brooke does. I'm trying to fill my brain with more achievable, realistic, aspirational thoughts rather than limiting thoughts. And every morning I come on Instagram and I've got one of your guys' faces, or I've got Adapt on there, or I've got Amanda on there. It's great energy to be waking up to. So I would say that to anyone who feels like they're being limited by the disability. Surround yourself with people and content that lifts you up.
Surround yourself with the right people and give everything a go. Don't think, I can't do this, I can't do that. Give it a go, and it might not be to the same way everyone does it, but at least you've achieved something. Like you never thought you could lift weights, and now you're lifting weights and doing competitions, and you're doing a back squat the other day as well, weren't you?
No, mad, absolutely mad. Yeah, and that's it. I think don't compare yourself to what you used to be as well. There's like a grieving process I think sometimes you go through, and a sense of loss, and comparing yourself not only to other people your age and what they're doing, which I think is normal. You compare yourself to a timeline of life of where you should be at with children, families, and moving out and all that stuff. But I think there's another string to it with a disability of, what should you be in the Paralympics by now? Like, that was my only reference to what I should be doing. You've got this disability, like, you want to get into sport, that's where you're going. It just wasn't achievable. But then I was also comparing myself to old pictures of myself at university and, holidays that I would normally go on, or sports that I would be doing. And I'd find myself flicking back like years and years and years of what I used to look like. I don't do that anymore.
And you're thinking, if this hadn't happened to me, what would I be doing right now? I'd be doing this right now, that right now. My life isn't as good as it should be, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Which is kind of going to bring you down. So you need to think, okay, this has happened. What can I do now? How can I better myself now?
Yeah, pretty much.
And I think that's a key thing for lots of people, because if you're young and it happened to you when you're young, you've got a whole life ahead of you. It's just going on a different pathway.
Yeah, I can see that now. I can definitely see that now. And I think because of the job that I do, it makes me more real. So I come across patients that have really had a tough hand in life, or are really struggling to see how life can get any better. And then I walk in the therapy room and they can see that I look different and that I have a disability. So when I sit there and say, I get it, life's hard, but it gets better, they believe it. They believe it because, you're sat here in a really good job. They can see I've got a nice car out there and I've driven to work, and I'm struggling to get about in the room, but I'm happy, I'm healthy, and they're like, yeah, okay, she can do it, maybe I can.
Definitely.
I've learnt to own it.
Exactly. Own it and be the best you can be. And that brings me on to my last question. So if people want to connect with you and find you, or when they want to watch what you do online, how can they find you?
How can they find me? So I guess Instagram's probably the best way. So I'm Mrs. Revamp on Instagram because, like I said, getting married was the highlight of my recovery so far, and Revamp because we have a camper van conversion business which we set up because of my disability, actually. So it's called Revamp Camper Vans. So when I couldn't fly and I couldn't get my blood pressure up, and we were supposed to go travelling in Australia, I felt like life was over. That was it. There was no prospects. But what we did is we converted a camper van and we put grab rails in there. He made sure that everything was at a height that I could get in. We had my meds. So we still managed to travel around the country. And believe it or not, there's not many disabled travellers out and about. So when you did find them, they were fascinated that the van was completely converted for someone with limb differences.
Yeah. You should show more of that. I'd love to see that.
I know we're getting there. We've got a couple of vans in at the moment, with people with wheelchair that are wheelchair users, and we've got an SEN bus in at the moment for people with autism. So we're going to do it all very sensory related. So yeah, it's cool. It's getting there. So it's very early days.
Cool.
But that I guess that's another achievement as well. But that's how you'll find me, either on that business page or on my personal Instagram.
And what kind of places have you been traveling to?
So in the campus so far, we want to take it to Europe. We've now got a van that's automatic, so I can drive it, because that was a barrier for a little while. And it's got aircon, so we can go abroad in it now, but we haven't done yet. So the furthest that we normally go to is like Scotland, up in the Highlands, like Isle of Arran. We want to do Ireland. We're going to start taking it to competitions because I'm absolutely exhausted, as I've learned. Yeah.
You can have a little nap in between each.
Have a little nap in between. Yeah,
just relax
in there. I don't know if you see, we travelled down with 2 wheelchair athletes for Southern Quarter, and I spent the whole time curled up in a ball because there was 4 wheelchairs in a van thrown in. This is expensive equipment that we have, isn't it? As disabled people, we invest a lot in our bodies. So I want to sort of get a better bus for the wheelchair athletes, or at least get a prototype, so that's not getting battered about for competitions. We protect it just as much as we would a bike or skiing equipment or whatever.
Yeah, big things to come.
I hope so.
Yeah, and it's been great to chat to you, Zoe. If anyone wants to get in touch with Zoe or watch what she does, then follow her on Instagram. She's putting all her new weightlifting exercises up on there, and she's going to be doing many more competitions. I'm sure I'll see you in the competition soon. Great to chat to you today. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I'll see you soon.
See ya.
Bye.